I am an enormous Yakuza fanboy. I've played every single game available to me other than Ishin. The First Judgment is, in my opinion, a top 5 at the very least in this series, including spin-offs. I love these games, but I just really didn't enjoy Lost Judgment. I don't think it's a dumpster fire. It has things that are going for it. The combat itself is actually some of the best in the entire series, but it just has so many other issues, some of which are always issues in Yakuza games, but they felt amplified here. I'm aware that this is an unpopular opinion, but as you're watching this, just remember that that is all this is. It's an opinion. With that out of the way, let's start with the story and the pacing. The main stick that people use to beat the Yakuza series with is its inconsistent pacing. Each and every game in this series will have a few moments where you're just watching cutscenes for an absurd amount of time. Now, I actually usually don't mind this. The stories are the main draw of these games for me personally, but if somebody weren't too interested in the main draw, the main mystery of a game in this series, then it's really going to affect their overall experience, and that was the experience I had with Lost Judgment. Like other games in the series, Lost Judgment attempts to tackle multiple heavy themes, including bullying, sexual harassment, and the justice system. While ambitious, this multi-thematic approach really dilutes this particular narrative's focus. The game sometimes struggles to balance these themes, which leads to a story that often feels overstuffed and directionless. The game's pacing is the significant issue. The main storyline feels so uneven, with moments of high tension followed by long stretches of less engaging content. Now, as I said, every single Yakuza game does this, but it felt worse in this game. This inconsistency really disrupted my immersion and investment in the story. There were moments where I was very intrigued, and I will say that the latter third of this game, I was definitely hooked on the narrative, and I eventually did come to really care about everything that was going on, and I was actually quite impressed with the ending. But in total, it just felt like a huge step down from the First Judgment. Additionally, the side cases, while sometimes interesting, very rarely seemed fun to me, but we will discuss this in more depth later on. Yagami remains compelling, which is no surprise. He's a great character, love that dude, but a lot of the supporting characters feel less developed than they did in the previous game. Their motivations and backstories feel underexplored, making it harder to connect with them. This lack of depth makes certain plot twists and character decisions feel unearned or abrupt. Now, this series is no stranger to random plot twists. They're often dumb. Yes, I'm looking at you, Yakuza 4. But again, it just felt amplified in this game. This series always relies heavily on exposition and lengthy dialogue sequences in order to convey its story. Whilst this is a hallmark of the Yakuza series, it can sometimes lead to information overload. You may find yourself wading through extensive conversations that could have definitely been more concisely presented. It's an issue this series has always had, but it's so bad in this particular game. The story in this game has a lot of very cool moments, but it's so sloppily put together that I found it difficult to enjoy for extended periods of time. And then we have the setting. Yokohama, completely fine. Love Yokohama. It's the school. The focus on the school in Lost Judgment had been a point of contention among many other players before and after release. And that's because there are several factors that contribute to the perception that this aspect of the game just feels boring, and I really do tend to agree. Now, I am open-minded when it comes to strange decisions in games. I like to give developers creative benefit of the doubt. They have the vision, and I'm always willing to see how that vision comes to fruition. But I just don't think the school works. The school introduces a range of side activities and investigations that revolve around typical high school issues such as bullying, cliques, and juvenile delinquency. Whilst these themes are relevant and somewhat important, the execution often falls into predictable patterns. The scenarios commonly become repetitive, lacking the depth and complexity that might be expected from the main storyline. Side stories in this series are always done so damn well. but they just aren't in this one. I really tried to do as many as I could, but I just really didn't care for them. Compared to the high stakes, intense scenarios involving crime and justice that characterise the main story, the school-based activities just feel trivial. The issues within the school, while serious in their own right, of course it's the whole reason that you're there in the first place, they just don't seem to carry the same weight or urgency as the larger narrative involving murder investigations and legal battles. This disparity can make the school segments feel less engaging and consequential. Now, this is strange, because most games in this series do something similar to this, and it isn't an issue. For example, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is my current game of the year at the time of recording. I platinumed the thing, I think it's phenomenal, but I spent a good third of that game on either Dondonku Island or playing Sujimo. Both of these minigames bring you out of the urgency of the main story. They're both stupid and dumb, and it's definitely a culture clash with the main narrative. Yet, it isn't a problem in that game. And why is that? I theorise it's because, simply put, they're just more fun. When I got to Dondoku Island, for example, I didn't leave until I'd finished it, even though, relatively speaking, it is pretty damn stupid. In Lost Judgment, I didn't want to spend a minute longer than I had to in that school, joining clubs and shit. It just doesn't fit the vibe of this series, which is something that has worked in other games, but I don't feel it does here. It's too much of a disconnect. The shift between the darker, more serious themes of the main plot and the relatively cliché school scenarios creates a tonal mismatch. The high school setting introduces elements of humour and lightheartedness that, while I could see how it could be enjoyable in moderation, feel out of place to me when juxtaposed against the game's more mature themes. This inconsistency in tone just detracts from the overall narrative experience, and as I've mentioned, I know this is something that the series does. There is no point typing, "That's just Yakuza bro, you don't get it." I do get it, I just don't think it works in Lost Judgment.
Hi everyone, this is me. Look how cool I am. Just wanted to take a 15-second break from the video to say that if you're enjoying the video, then please consider taking a look at some of the other videos on the channel. If any look interesting to you, check them out. You'll be doing yourself a favour if you really think about it, and then subscribe while you're there. I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it if you stuck around as long as you enjoy the content. I even have a playlist on the channel for what I think are some of my best videos, so they're easy viewing. Thanks guys, back to the video.
Now, I'm not a monster. I'm not a straight up hater. I can admit that the combat in this game absolutely slaps. If somebody's core reason for enjoying Yakuza games is the combat, then they would love the shit out of this game. I do enjoy the combat, and this game may have the best real-time combat in the series. I don't think that that's an out there suggestion to make. The game offers multiple fighting styles, each with unique moves and combos. Yagami can switch between these styles in real time, allowing you to adapt to different combat situations and keep the gameplay fresh. The combat mechanics are designed to be fluid and responsive. The animations are smooth and the transitions between attacks is seamless, giving a real sense of control. Not only does the combat feel so damn good, but it's directed brilliantly. It always looks grand. It incorporates cinematic elements into its combat sequences. The special moves are not only powerful, but also visually impressive, making fights feel like choreographed action scenes. There's also a diverse range of enemies with different fighting styles and behaviours. It's nothing crazy, but like, you'd have a big guy with somebody that guards and stuff like that. The AI is designed to be somewhat challenging but fair at the same time, which requires you to think strategically and use your abilities without really pummeling you into the ground. This is apparent in the fighting styles, by the way. Some of them work great against certain enemies, but fall short when going up against others, meaning that if you really want to get the most out of the game, you should be experimenting with different movesets. All of these elements combine to create a combat system that is incredibly fun, engaging, and smooth. There's a lot of stuff about Lost Judgment that I don't like, but the combat isn't one of those things. Lost Judgment deeply disappointed me. As a super fan of the series, I always go into these games like a starry-eyed child rushing to an ice cream van. Only this time they'd ran out of syrup. The story is paced and structured horrendously, even by this series' standards. The plot itself threatens to become interesting, but then grinds to a halt for too often. There's too much of an emphasis on the boring school stuff for my taste, with a tonal shift that uncharacteristically for this series just doesn't work. Despite this, the combat is arguably the most fun that this series has ever offered. There's still a lot of fun to be had with Lost Judgment, and I would never recommend a fan of the series to skip it, because everyone likes and dislikes certain games in this series differently. For example, some people think that Yakuza 4 is a brilliantly crafted experience with twists and reveals that leave you chomping at the bit for more, and some people have brains and hate rubber bullets. Jokes aside, all that Lost Judgment does have going for it just wasn't enough for me. Too many elements I regard in high esteem for this series just fall flat in this one, and that is why Lost Judgment disappointed me. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, as that would greatly help me out. I apologise if you love Lost Judgment. I'm very happy for you if you do. If you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe, because I upload every single week. But for now, that is all from me. Have a nice day, and goodbye.
We don't even know if there's a bully in the first place.
Hence why we called in the reinforcements.
So, I take it you have some sort of plan?